Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm a child psychiatrist and parent coach, and I love supporting parents in raising children that thrive. Today, I'm going to answer a question that parents often ask me, which is parenting intuitive? Should I just know what's right? So, if that's something that rings a bell for you, please continue watching. The short answer is yes and no, because what it really depends on is your own experience. There is a lot of information out there saying parents do know best, they just know. Parenting is an intuitive thing. We're animals, we should be able to know what to do with our babies and how to parent them. And I think it's really difficult because parents often feel confused. And I think being told that they should know what's right when they themselves feel confused, it just creates a feeling like you don't really know what you're doing. And obviously, there's something wrong with you because if it's intuitive and you don't really know what to do, then you must have some bit missing. And that's definitely not true. There are some things that are fairly intuitive. So, you intuitively go to babies that cry, usually. Most parents would. They would understand the child is distressed. So, some things like that are very intuitive. So, very, very basic things. But I think the things that aren't are a bit harder, and that's relating to how you respond emotionally to more subtle cues, because actually that really depends on your own upbringing. So, if you have had an upbringing that's allowed you to have a secure attachment style, so you had a parent who's very sensitive to your needs and who met them appropriately, then actually you've probably developed that as well. You've got that in you, so you will naturally be quite sensitive to your baby. You'll naturally know how to respond to them, and you probably will be one of those parents for whom parenting is intuitive and it works fairly well most of the time. But if you've been brought up in a way that's not been very sensitive and hasn't allowed you to develop the secure attachment, so if you've grown up with an insecure attachment style, which is not uncommon, it is, a fairly common thing to happen, then actually the way you won't necessarily know how to emotionally respond to things, or the way that your baby cries or is upset might trigger you. And it's the same for older children as well. So sometimes it's not intuitive if you haven't had that experience of someone being sensitive towards you yourself, because you won't intuitively know how to respond to something, or you might end up responding in a way that's a bit more annoyed or stressed or anxious because maybe you haven't been held yourself when you were a child. Perhaps your emotions weren't dealt with in the right way or in a sensitive way. You might have had a very anxious parent yourself. So actually, if that's your experience, then it will be difficult for you to just simply be intuitive. And this can also happen if perhaps you're perfectly aware that the upbringing you've had is not what you would like for your child, and you decide that you're going to do it completely differently and you just go towards something completely opposite to what you had. And again, that may not be very intuitive, because actually finding the balance between being, overly sensitive and sensitive to the right level, and over responding and responding to the right level, it is quite hard. And when you haven't had that experience, it does take some time to develop that. So don't be too harsh on yourself if actually you're a parent for whom you're not always sure how to respond, or you might find having a sort of weird, anxious response to how your baby or your child is. It might be about your own parenting that you have experienced. So really what you can do is have a think about your past, think about how you were brought up, whether your main caregivers were sensitive to your needs, were they overly anxious, or were they quite dismissive? Was it different? Was it sometimes that they were sensitive and sometimes they weren't? And really be honest with yourself about that. And if that is the case, and perhaps the upbringing you've had has not been very sensitive, then let yourself learn how to do it in the right way for you. So you just might need a bit longer. You might need a bit of support, perhaps from a partner who has had a sensitive upbringing, or from a friend or someone else. It can even be a professional, just to support you to find a way of being sensitive without getting that response. So hopefully that was helpful. If there was a question that you would like answering, please do let me know in the comments or message me. I always read the messages and the comments I get. And if there is something you'd like answering, I often do that. And otherwise, I will see you next week.